3, 2, 1. And welcome once again. This is Ted Hicks, Late Night Parents. Ways to follow the show, latenightparents.com. Where do I get started? Got Shawn Armor on the line, True Armor. We frequent friend of the family for many, many moons. And, you know, I can't even put you in as a guest because I always say, because I hope you know that's a template that I use, and it says guest.
Right.
True Armor, right? Stuff like that. And I notice sometimes the wisecracks. You're like, hey, I'm a guest. That's great. How are you?
I'm good. It's beautiful. Excuse me. It's beautiful, sunny. Excuse me.
How's that pollen?
Excuse me. I know, right?
How's that pollen treating you? As you're saying how beautiful it is.
Exactly. I mean, I have a black car, and some days it looks green. So yeah, the pollen here is just ridiculous. But I should probably get a glass of water. But yeah, I'm fine.
Hey, if you want to get a glass of water, I can cover some housekeeping stuff.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Let me just grab a bottle from the kitchen.
Yeah, you grab that bottle. And want to give a big shout-out to everyone who listens to the show, to whether you listen to the live Sunday night show or any one of the podcasts that we do. We kind of try to cut it up, give you a different feel. Because I like to say a Sunday night show for radio, terrestrial radio, is kind of, that feel-good, where we'll sit and we'll talk with,
it's Sunday.
This latest inventor or this entrepreneur or stuff like that. But we can kind of just talk because that's what we do as old friends and just cover anything. We
wander.
Yeah, we do kind of wander,
Yeah,
but,
that's the point of those conversations, right?
Yeah.
No structure, just kind of like go where your head goes.
Everyone that downloads the show, I want to say thank you. Everyone that plays the archived show on your internet station or terrestrial station, I want to say thank you to you guys also, to the PR team, the PR reps that do reach out to us. We are talking about your products, whether it's through social media or as a plug on the show. I want to say thank you also. Things have been picking up. They usually pick up around about just prior to Father's Day. Dads and their gadgets.
Right.
That's when it starts to get a little heavy. But other than that, man, there's a couple of topics we want to cover. I'm going to try and keep this to a decent time frame because tonight I'm heading to my daughter's high school. She's being honored for,
nice.
It's like some type of honor roll. She makes like the dean's list. So there's something happening tonight and then also on the 14th. And I will tell you this. I had an event I had to go to tonight because I usually go to like the bigger events on Thursday night. So I had an event. It was going to be tons of vendors and everything else like this, and it was focusing around the world of fitness and technology. And I just said, nah, I'll catch it next year.
Right.
It's one of those deals. Because I would never be able to live it down, I mean,
right.
Father's Day is next month. So no reason for them to blast me.
A tactical decision. Right. This was a
the
tactical
only decision.
Exactly.
I was like, Shawn, we were at the point where I had the two options, and I just said, we're in the Endgame now.
Right.
I was like, I said, I've seen my future if I choose the wrong option.
Right.
And it would be getting blasted by every member of the family.
All right.
And having a wife talking nonstop, not in your favor.
Right. But here's the thing. Like, the worst of that to me is once you think it's over, it comes back randomly. Like, you expect to take heat for it for the first few months, but the next few years, like, when you think it's, like, it surprises you at, like, barbecues or you missed this, you know what I mean? So it's just this thing that will perpetually return like an infinite boomerang. So, yeah, the wise choice to make is to side with going to the family affair.
Yeah. And to any family members that do listen to the pod, I'm just joking right now. I'm not being serious. There was no, the Endgame reference was to the movie because, somehow it'll get back. And then the missus will be listening to it, talking about, I heard the show where you were talking about choosing, and I'm like, oh, my God, I don't do that.
Yeah.
So, a couple of topics. Some of this stuff will take a little bit longer. Some of the stuff we can dive deeper into.
Right.
Want your take on Endgame?
Well, it's been. Well, first let's talk about spoilers, right? So I was watching something a couple of days ago where they were talking about how TV spoilers is different from movie spoilers, right? So Game of Thrones people like have a different like time frame, whereas our crew, we have a 10-day window, right? So we don't talk about like these things that take to the community like this movie has, right? So a movie that everybody wants to see, not everybody's going to see it opening day, so you give people like a week plus some, right? So 10 days, your squad might have 2 weeks, but by then people begin leaking it, right? So this past week, one of the Russos said what we were doing, right? He said 10 days is good because people want to talk about it. You can't not talk about it. And at the same time, you don't want to be, disrespectful to your neighbors and your friends who haven't seen it, may have had to work late, wanted to see it with their spouse who was away or whatever the case may be. Having said that, right, we're past the 10-day limit. So I wouldn't even know how to tell your listeners to plug up their ears and come back. But 10 days, days out, this is the thing.
Yeah, we're beyond that point.
Yeah, right. So I'm still trying to be polite to them and be understanding of their thing, but it's beyond 10. It's beyond 2 weeks. It's made $1 billion in change. Good Lord. So this movie,
$2 billion.
Yeah. Wow. I like $2 billion money. Disney owns your childhood. Or the Snow White Princess books for the girls and all the superhero stuff for the boys and all those who like both, and you know what I mean? And if you don't like none, there's other stuff for you that Disney has. It's crazy how so connected that company is in like the growing up of all of us. But I remember reading comic books and talking about these books with like the other comic book kids. I'm talking about 8 and 9 and 10, And you would think, we used to talk about how you couldn't make these movies. I remember when SpiderMan came out on television and Captain America was a television show, and they were horrible. They were nothing like the comic books, and I loved them anyway. You know what I mean? And now to see this thing, like I think I can tell you the best scene in all these movies, these 20 movies over the past 10 years, when Thanos in Infinity Wars, the last movie, when Thanos hit Iron Man with a moon, right? That whole scene was just, when I watch it over and over again. Because it's such a comic book scene. Like, it's so, over the top doesn't cover it. But over the top sounds insincere and disrespectful to, like, the idea of what comic books are about, right? Comic books are about the bold idea, the big gesture, willing to risk it all. And then when you fight, even as in the comic books we read as kids, you could beat the ever-living stuffing out of somebody, but no one ever died, or if they did, they came back, like they brought Superman back and all this. So this is the magic of comic books, right? So the idea that, and it was, he stands there grips the moon as the moon is in the background. Then there's another shot from like the moon in the foreground where they are. You can't see them. That's the planet that they're on. And there's a close-up of the moon just beginning to, you've seen it, just begins to be affected by whatever he's doing a million miles away. And then they cut back to him, and all you see is these comments from the bits of the moon. And I was like, that is, whoever wrote that scene understood comic books, right? They were one of those comic book kids, long before they knew what Heartbreak was and Rent was and Bad Bosses were. They were embedded in this lore. And that scene, to me, speaks to all these movies, right? So now getting back to the what would you call this? I guess the capstone on this, I would call them masterpiece films. Yeah, they're all not 4 stars, but the worst of them, like everybody's always going on about The Dark World. It was not that bad a movie. People, and we Americans like to hate stuff. It was not that bad a movie. And some chapters in books are better than other chapters in books. And that's how you should view this movie. So was it weaker? Yeah, but it was still a great film. Well, it was still a good film, right? And it was still a good film amongst great films. So now you take Endgame, which I felt like I had taken something before I saw it, because I left thinking about it like it existed. Like you ponder why World War I happened. Well, Archduke Ferdinand wasn't that big a deal, and so what? Then I liked his girl, blah, blah, blah. And there was this proxy thing, just like we have proxy wars, and we could have a third world war because no one thought we could have a first world war, and blah, blah, blah. Those are real world issues that affect you if you follow politics like I follow politics. But I walked out of that movie with the same kind of intense, need to figure it out in this movie, because I mean, what's trippy about sci-fi movies, not sci-fi movies, but time travel movies, is in this movie in particular, is they denounce one set of time travel kind of like philosophy, the Back to the Future deal, which is if I go back in time and I break up your mom and dad, you don't exist, right? That's their philosophy.
Right.
I sort of interrupted what should have happened. Whereas in Infinity War, the idea is if I go back in time to break up your mom and dad, your mom and dad still meet in our timeline, but now that they branch off, right? So now you instantly, no one noticed it as it happens, but it's like, what if Hitler made 3 decisions right versus all of them wrong, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe he doesn't rule the world, but he rules all of Europe, right? Maybe America, so it's this thing. So it sort of slides off in this way, which I buy, fine. You give me another interesting narrative. I love a what if. But then to tie it back up, the way they tied it back up, I can only think that all those things are for the next batch of movies, right? Because there are a lot of questions we're all asking about it. And if that's the case, then these guys are brilliant. And Disney should run America. Yeah,
they are brilliant, and they should run America because, like you said, we are still asking questions like, okay, so what does this mean now? Because I mean, they were laying so many different breadcrumbs.
Yeah, I mean the idea that what's her name, Gamora, is the one from the past who's now in the future, and she's, I mean, all the bonds that she had no longer exist because she didn't create them.
Gone.
Yeah, but now she's not in a. She's from the past, but not only is she from the past, she's in a different timeline. You see what I'm saying? So you could take this story in several different, completely ridiculous directions. I mean, I love the fact that Thor's going to be in Dark World if James Gunn puts him in, right? But the idea that they did something that I've read a lot of science fiction, and but I've never seen someone go from the past, right, to the future into a separate timeline. That scene alone could just explode your head. But yeah, that movie is that's what I walk away thinking about most. I mean, the movie had 1,000 good scenes. The Captain America fights Captain America scene was beautiful, and these infinities. But yeah, what I got stuck on, it was a good movie. I mean, there was some tears shed. Thor's whole issue with his mother. You're wondering why, if Gamora could survive, why couldn't his mom, right? So all these kind of questions that a good movie will make you ponder about and make you want to see it again, because the first thing about movies is, the first thing about any good media is the suspension of any good fiction media. I don't want to say all media because we have news agents who are doing this, but it's the suspension of disbelief, right? It's the idea that you buy the premise, like a joke, you buy the premise, you buy the bit. So if I tell you like a ridiculous racist joke, for instance, if I tell you a racist joke and you're like, I don't like racist jokes, I don't like any of these appropriate jokes, rape jokes, any of that, you're not buying the premise. So you're going to be angry, but if you're one of these guys where, you're laid back and you're like, the comedians think you should be able to tell all kind of jokes no matter what. So in their community, or, they don't want any censorship. So in the comedian community, they buy all premises for the bit, right? So here we are. I'm like, when I see these movies, I'm like, all right, I'm in with the disbelief until you pull me out of it, right? And I may ask myself questions, but that doesn't necessarily pull me out of the fiction. It's got to be something super ridiculous to pull me out of the fiction. Like, a coffee cups in your Game of Thrones. She might as well have left her iPod on the table. Then I'd have been like, all right, that's just lazy. And why is, it's not even a MacGuffin. But MacGuffins are these things that they put in scripts to further the story. They serve no purpose. You know what I mean? Like a good MacGuffin in the first Star Wars was the idea that many Bothans died to bring these tapes and you're like, oh, who are they? We don't have to tell you who they are, what they did. They just help us get the story to the next level. You know what I mean? But that's what stories are. You work hard all day, you have a beer with your boys, you commiserate. That's part of life. You sit and have a tender moment with your loved one. That's part of life. You watch these movies to escape into fantastical realms. That's part of life. And all these things, after these nice moments or bad moments, whatever, you serve yourself well if you think about it and go, this was a nice moment, and that's why it was a nice moment. I'm going to look for more of these nice moments in life and see if I can, jack them up, cheat the machine if that case. But it's just good old-fashioned, newfangled fairy tale myth-making Americanism. This comic book world, is like, it's like skateboarding that like white poor kids in California came up with in the early 70s. It's like rap music that black kids came up with in the late 70s. It's this unique, interesting American thing that the world loves us for and that we should be proud of. And we shouldn't so much treat it always, I'm preaching now, we shouldn't so much treat it always as idiot fare for, but at one point in time, the stories of Cinderella and Rose Red and, those were new stories too, right? I mean, it's just good storytelling. I would totally own that movie and I'd see it again, and there's 20 of them. It's quite a sit down to watch. But man, yeah. The old comic books used to travel like parallel to like the civil rights era. This idea of mutants were considered like black people. Why didn't they have rights and all this stuff? And I thought that sort of angle of it all began to get preachy. But this Marvel, Avengers, Tony Stark, Iron Man, Ant-Man. Ant-Man's my favorite of them, by the way. It's not as big and splashy. Let me know when I'm going on too long here, man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like Ant-Man is not that big and splashy like all the, but there's a heart to it, and the little girl who's in it does a sweet job, and the Spanish guy, I forget his name, it's hysterical. T.I. is pretty good in it. It's a nice. I mean, the villains are kind of like weak sauce, but that's fine for the tempo of it. It's just a great action PG. I would call it G actually. Superhero movie compared to some of the grittier, like I would say of these Marvel. Which one? I would say the first Iron Man was sort of gritty, and actually more comic book of most of them to get most people on board. But it was also a fair amount of a propaganda film of American war speciality, which is fine. I mean, he was a weapons designer. I totally get that in the story. But this movie is just about a guy trying to get back to his daughter, essentially, and everything he does in that is designed to that end. I've got 3 days to get off of house arrest and be able to take my kid around. And that's his motivation for that whole movie. And through the course of that, he loses a suit, and he gets intercepted by these guys who are. Well, I'm talking about Ant-Man 2, with Wasp, the Wasp. That the whole arc of those two movies are kind of my favorites. But this one, the comedy in this one was good. Ragnarok is my second favorite, I'd have to say, and because like it gave Hulk a chance to like speak and like tell you where he was coming from, and then how they explained the whole Hulk thing is good too. I mean, those guys did a stellar job. I would just love to see the 20 film kind of what do they call them? Not when you get somebody to script. No, but before someone writes it, they spec. Like in Hollywood, they give you a spec script, just like 20, 30 pages of what the script is going to be, just so you can get kind of I guess the money people can get a feel for it. And then there's one of that where I think it's 10 pages. But at this level, they're not writing 10-page scripts for these movies because they know they have the backing for it. But so like you get these spec scripts of all of them. I'm pretty sure the spec script was like 100 pages, and all the actual scripts have to amount out to, if every movie is 90 to a page on the what is it? A minute on the screen is a page in the script, right? So if every movie is in Avengers Endgame was 3 hours, so that's what is that? 9, 18. I'm trying to do the math in my head that's like 300 pages of a script. So that's 300 pages. How many pages was Iron Man? Those two movies, right? You end up with a movie script that's like 1,500, 2,000 pages of all really. Man, when they start releasing this stuff in 10 years by the scripts, but Disney's going to make yet another $10 billion because I hate to say it, but I may need the hardbound scripts of all these movies, as well as, and they're going to change the format. Now we're using DVD. I'm about to say DVD. We stopped using DVD. Had them all on DVD. Now you'll get them streaming, and in the next 10 years they'll probably be selling them to you in holograms, and you can sit amongst the Battle of New York, amongst the rubble as Iron Man and Thor do that thing around you. These movies are the new, the new fairy tales of our age, where you could just cut your brain off and go to some fantastic world. Like in my dad's age, I think it was swashbuckling movies, right? In the 30s, right. It was Errol Flynn and they all did the big move back then was like to jump on a pirate boat, ship rather, and slide down the sail with a knife. Remember those scenes? So all these things are just, I mean, you should be proud of them, but you should show them a fair amount of respect, but you shouldn't take them seriously. You know what I mean? So just because you don't take them seriously doesn't mean you don't respect them. I mean, the art form and how much stuff went into this art is fantastic, but the people who are talking about it promotes violence and it causes shooting is ridiculous because no one's also flying off of buildings or getting into giant car chases or trying to raid the mint with their ragtag band of mercenaries that are always in a Avengers movies, right? There's a ton of henchmen.
So answer this question for me. Did you feel it was necessary to have the genocide approach included into the movie? You know, just the whole premise of the Thanos snap and tens of billions.
I wouldn't call it genocide, because here's the thing: genocide is sort of a loaded word, and genocide also, I would use extinction. I wouldn't use extinction. Extinction is everybody. Genocide generally is about one particular group of people. So if you want to say he did the snap and got rid of half of humans, okay, that's a genocide. But he was talking about half of all life on the planet. So half of the birds, half of the bees, half of the men, half of the women, half of the frogs, half of the, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't call it a genocide, but what I call it population control, absolutely. So it's the hidden message about that is this little marble that we're on, swinging around the sun, shooting through space, is getting overcrowded, and the people who tell you that, you know, we'll just go and live on Mars are ridiculous. And that's my takeaway from it. You know what I mean?
So what are you thinking? You thinking Thanos is a Republican or a Democrat?
You know what? I hate to say it, but wow, would Thanos be a Republican or a Democrat, or something totally and completely new? I think Thanos wouldn't be either. I think Thanos would likely be Putin, right? I mean, he's about getting it done. And if you're not gonna, well, not Putin. Who's somebody who's held a regime together with dark measures and bold actions, and the world was feared to deal with them, right? Wow. If you could start parsing all these characters, who would be, right? Who would be Captain America? Who would be the world villain? But even Thanos has support, right? I mean, Thanos is a villain like Darth Vader was a villain, right? You sort of had disrespect for Darth Vader. He's not a villain like any of these. I can't come up with a rote bad guy who you just kind of just hate, but not like respect, even though he's the bad guy. But yeah, you know, bad guys are not supposed to be like. You know who started this trend? Alan Rickman, when he was the bad guy in Die Hard, right? He was this smart, clever, like he dressed well. He wasn't this shystery bum, right? Before that, like, you could be a mobster and talk well and have all the nice stuff. People, like, feared you and would stay out of your way, but they didn't, like, you bought them with the money and the stuff you had. You know, they didn't love you because you were a mobster. But this kind of energy is different, right? It's willing to, if someone said this guy's a bad guy, you would be like, who, him? Nah, man. Or you would know that and go, but you would make excuses for that guy. He does this to hold us together. Sorry about that. So it's this kind of thing. And Thanos is this. He's not like, I'm trying to rob this bank to get more money, to get these women, and to get this space Bentley, or whatever the case is. He's like, you know, the world was beautiful. Like his motivation in not Endgame, in I forget the name of it, but he tells you, like, you know,
Infinity War?
It was beautiful, but then there was hunger, and there were too many people in this world, right? And then he had the problem on his world, and then he realized the problem was just greater than his world. It was every place. And, you know, being an all-in type of cat, he was like, well, if it's here on, not Xandar, if it's here,
Titan.
It's everywhere.
Titan,
thank you. If it's here on Titan and the problem is Titan, then the problem is every place. So, yeah, I mean, I think Thanos in the last 20 years is one of the great villains of American cinema, you know. And I think we were needing one, but we reinvent like it's somebody's business. We reinvented the hero with Sigourney Weaver, right? I mean, God love her. And now all of a sudden everybody's like, gotta have a strong women character in this movie. That's a Sigourney Weaver effect, you know? They don't want to give her credit, but like I dare you to put a woman in a movie where she's like, where are the men who will save me? And then she goes running like in the 50s and trips and falls. Women would lose their minds. They would march on Washington going, what the heck do you think? And they'd be absolutely right. You know, we're not trying to go back. And the idea that, you know, you would put like, if you did put that character in a film, it would have to be opposite the strong female character who's like, I can do this myself or whatever. Many versions of that strong character, they're not always punching you in the face, right? They're solving problems there. In Jurassic Park, it was oh my God, what was the name of those two young ladies? Anyway, when they needed them to lock the door, the young woman got on and managed to reinstall the locks on the gates in the perimeter, and I forgot her name. The other woman managed to, you know. Anyway, but this is the new thing, and man, I wonder how they're gonna do the Black Widow movies, because she's not super powerful, so now it's got to be interesting. And the good thing about Marvel, they have so many type of heroes, right? You can make a Marvel heroes movie about horror movie, right? You can make one about a love story. You can make one about science fiction. You can make one that's more realistic about like some of the mutants who, like, instead of being able to lift like houses and buildings and cars, some can only lift pencils and papers and move coffee cups, right? That's a totally different set of movies. So this is just going to be, you know, and I was kind of getting burnt out with all the action movie stuff, but the superhero movie stuff. But, you know, I got to say, I saw that SpiderMan trailer, and I was like, okay, one more. It looks good, and SpiderMan has always been one of my favorites. And his movies were good and sort of wholesome and, you know, spoke to the idea of not giving up and getting to the next stage, even if you have to do it yourself, you know, and no one fears you. Because in the first Spider-Man movie, he was saying, I'm trying to tell you that this guy, Vultures, is a problem. You should look into him, right? And they're like, nah, we got it, don't worry, because they're in the middle of moving. Remember that? Yeah. They're in him and Happy, and Tony's too busy for him. And the whole idea of that is very much like the comic books, this idea of Aunt May doesn't get it. His girl begins to get it after she finds out what he's doing in his off time. But that's the tragedy of that character. I loved that character as a kid, and then he got out of high school, and his life fell apart. And I was like, he's supposed to be extra smart. He built these webs, right? He saves all these people. He does all these things. Why is he perpetually broke and unhappy? Why is his woman always giving him? As soon as he graduates high school and college, Spider-Man becomes just kind of like one of the lamest characters in comic book history. He's perpetually broke and unhappy. And most every other character, I mean, he wins, but at every book is at such a cost. It's like, why do it? You know what I mean? So it's.
Did you see Into the Spider-Verse? Did you see Into the Spider-Verse?
I enjoyed it.
Did you like it, or what were your thoughts on it?
I did. I liked it a lot. And for very much the same reasons. When they redid Miles Morales, even though they made him a black and Puerto Rican kid, it was still what made the original Peter Parker popular, right? Peter Parker, all the other superheroes that I remember reading, Superman was an adult, Batman was an adult, right? Or if they were kids, they were sidekicks. Spider-Man was the first one I ran across who got his powers in high school, right? And according to the lore, it was like a field trip, a ninth grade field trip. So he had to be around 13 or 14, somewhere around there. And the idea that, you know, he's trying to do this thing as a kid, which is why his stature was always small in these books compared to everybody else. I always thought was interesting. And, you know, like I said, the character sort of is a latchkey kid. Like he's an orphan. You know, like his parents died in a Himalayan plane crash, oddly enough, because they were missionaries, I think. And he's taken care of by his grandparents on this Queens street, right? We're from Queens. And it's that kind of just small town. That's why I think he got me. He was, and it's the idea of perpetually trying to feel upbeat, even as you see him in all these comic books get punished essentially. So the Miles Morales Into the Spider-Verse is sort of the same thing, right? He's trying to be his own person. He's trying to do his own thing. He's stuck with what his parents tell him to do, like Peter Parker was, right? You know, with great power comes great responsibility. He tells him that not knowing he's a superhero. It's the idea that, you know, be a responsible person, do the right thing in the world, despite what people say about you. Like, try not to give in, you know. I know your dad wasn't there for you. I know your mom may have not liked you. I know, but, you know, you have to, if you've got no friends and family, you have to look to you. So that means maybe you have to read more stuff, right? Maybe you have to save more here, work out more there, take on it. But the idea of that, I think if I had to put it in a base thing, is sort of this inner positivity, not confidence, because confidence is another thing entirely, right? But this inner kind of call on yourself to solve a problem versus falling into woe is me-ism, which is a thing. And don't get me wrong, woe is me exists in the world because it's needed, right? It's a balancing thing, but you don't need to mainline it. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to get the six-pack of it every day because you don't like your boss or your man isn't being cool to you that day, or you don't know what the heck to do with the kids, right? The whole idea of it is if you want this great power and this great responsibility, you have to mold yourself into the person who can be about, right? So this is at least what I took from it, like reading these comic books over decades and revisiting the idea of Spider-Man. So now you get Miles Morales, who has the same thing. His dad is like, you know, in the movie he's like, I love you. He's like, Dad. He's like, you know what? That's kind of one of these great power, great responsibility things. As lame as it is, you know, the power of love, let's say, is this magic thing. So your mom kissing you in public may embarrass you in front of your friends, right? And they may give you grief later as you're 8, 9, and 10. But you learn to take the slings, and later on when you're 30 and someone makes a joke, you're not sensitive about it because these things happen incrementally. You're slowly able to carry more weight. You're slowly able to push a heavier load. You're slowly able to run a longer distance over the course of time. So it's these kind of things that I think we lose in our society with this idea of taking the short route, which a lot of us do, right? Hip-hop is all about getting that money, and it's like, don't you care how you got that money? Nobody cares how I got that money. It's like, yeah, but you were kind of a sinister person, and now you're hanging out at the Met Gala. So, you know what I mean? It's like, what is the standard, right? Even when the guys had this idea of nobility, people weren't righteous people, right? This idea of chivalry, people weren't righteous people. But, like, some people tried, and this strikes me about this whole Miles Morales, Peter Parker kind of, but I have homework, but I want to do this, I want to see this girl, but I can't let this weighty thing go because I am the type of person, I was raised well enough, or learned well enough, or educated well enough, or invested myself in something well enough to know that this will bother me. And that means it will follow me. If no one knows that I did it or I didn't do the thing, that whatever the thing may be, it will revisit me. You know, like how we started your show earlier today. if you don't go up to the family event. It will revisit you. Like, so you'll sit there and you'll go, oh, maybe I should have done this. Maybe I could have said that. Like, if I didn't have such a temper, and you can work on your temper, and people do that. But people hit their level and they're happy. And some people try and fight through these things, and like ultra marathoners who run 100 miles versus 26.2 versus guys who kind of like do 5Ks, right? Like these are ladders, right? Like chaos is a ladder, yeah, but so is self-achievement. So this all started because you asked me about Miles Morales. Can you believe it? So Miles Morales, very much like Peter Parker, and the idea that, you get a universe with a lot of characters, Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Noir, all these characters are essentially the same template, right? They have that same sense of doing the thing that needs to be done no matter what. And, so, I mean, it's a really good movie. And the soundtrack is fire. So
yes, definitely. Hey, you want to change gears for a second?
Yeah.
It's Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents. A somewhat serious topic, and we've been seeing it more and more, and we're seeing people falling off cliffs, people hurting themselves, and for a selfie.
Yeah.
And I get it. You want to be leaning maybe off of a boat, or you want to, you want that perfect view of the picture, and I guess you're using the selfie. I don't know. But it's troubling. It's troubling that we're seeing this. And it's different if it's once in a lifetime where, hey, this accident happened. But it's starting to be more the norm. And
yeah,
what's going on.
Well, I can tell you exactly what's going on. People are not paying attention to their surroundings, right? Like, it's like, remember a couple of weeks ago, it may have been 3 weeks ago, this woman walked out of a club, or I don't know if it was a club, but walked out of a public place, right? I want to say it's a club. If it's not a club, I apologize. And stepped into the wrong Uber, right? It wasn't even an Uber. It was some dude's car. And he had the child safety locks on in the back. And this is because it's this idea of people not really paying attention to their surroundings, kind of like just sleepwalking through life, like putting some stuff on autopilot. And sometimes, like, there's video of this on YouTube, like online. People will, like, look at their phone and walk into a fountain. That's silly, look at what you did. But other times, people walk off cliffs or fall off stuff, and then because a death happened, you can't it, right? Now you have to look at it more seriously. But at the end of the day, what happened was people were not paying attention. So I think that's what it is. Trying to lean and are really balanced, like lean up against the rail. And here's the thing about all of a sudden finding the human body finding itself in a new balanced paradigm, right? Let's call it that, which means I'm fairly fit and athletic. And I don't mean that in the sense that I can outrace Usain Bolt or but I'm saying, play some baseball, play some football, rollerbladed, skateboarded, was a jogger, was a runner, play handball, play tennis, all the stuff that we did growing up. Could climb a tree to this day still. I've met people who could not catch a ball, much less throw a ball. And it's this hand-eye coordination thing that you kind of get good at as a kid. And if you don't do it, I've met people who could not run. Their coordination for running, me, them, and a bear, I can jog away to safety. them running is all motion and no efficiency. So you get into this kind of place where you don't really know the sense of your body when it's not just standing up or sitting down, and you lean it against the railing, and if the railing shifts, you got to be like, ooh, that oop moment is you can catch yourself or grab, like the kid who's about to slip to the rail, or be grabbed by your guy, or grab your guy, or any of these scenarios. But if you're not hand-eye coordinated, body, when I say body confident, I don't mean like how you look in a dress. I mean, if someone tosses me something, I can avoid it or catch it or deflect it, and if something happens, you can grab the rail and be like, oh my God, I almost fell over. Whew, that was close. That happens, I would say, 1,000 times a day in every neighborhood in America. But one of those thousands, people miscalculate and break a wrist, break an arm, they fall down. It gets worse as you get older. But when you add that to not paying attention, and you happen to be one of those people, I think this is where we get, especially when you add alcohol. So, like, we had this happen a couple of weeks ago with an older woman who I was like, well, it's the same thing. You get you get balance issues, and, you're in this place, and I could see a misstep and not being able to hold yourself up because of age and, like, we need some arms. I totally get that. But also, you had a 23-year-old woman who fell out of a bell tower at Fordham and died, which was tragic. And, and then you had a young woman who was drinking. There was alcohol involved in that. And she fell over a thing, and I mean, that was last week. And, a private bit of information, I had a friend who went to a party who fell off a roof. Like, it was just one of those things where.
But what do we blame it on? Do we blame it on?
And he fell off a roof.
Is it alcohol? Is it?
Every scenario is different, right? So my friend's case, it was a rooftop party. He was always the life of the party. And the way the story sounds is he just lost his balance. I want to say on a fire escape but they weren't sitting on the this was in New York. They weren't sitting on the butt of the rooftop, but it was kind of like, lost his balance, took a step, expecting a little more ground to be there, and it wasn't. And then he tumbled over the side of the thing, right? So it's that. It's like, ooh, I need 4 feet to recover from this stumble, but I only had 3.5. You know what I mean? It's sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's stone drunken goofiness. And sometimes it's people who are just not paying attention. All things are not equal. So, yeah, I mean, just because we're all standing here facing the Atlantic doesn't mean you all got here by the same way, right? So they all had these falls, but in the story that I told, one was drunk, one was a little older, and I don't want to say infirm, but a little weaker. One was just a college kid who was climbing a tower, which I don't even understand how that happens. I think that was because of coordination I was talking about. People don't have physicality. And one was a girl taking a selfie who, you know what I mean? So you get these people who are all sitting in the same hospital room for the same thing, and you go, what happened? And everybody's got different reasons how they ended up in the very same position. And I think a lot of it is. So
is this bad judgment? Is this bad judgment?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say.
What do we attribute it to?
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say if you fall off a roof, it's bad judgment.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I think. Look, I have had my fair share of drinks on Brooklyn rooftops, and I know my level, right? And I remember having to climb up through the ladder back before. If you guys don't know Brooklyn buildings, right? Sometimes you can go out your apartment and go up the fire escape and then climb up onto the roof. Sometimes people have brownstones and they have fire escapes on it, but sometimes they don't. And at the top floor, there's sort of a bat ladder that you climb up. You flip the the trap door up to the roof open, and then you climb out that way, right? So you always have to watch women in sundresses because it's, sundresses and ladders. And then you all get up there, and then you got to, because nobody's really supposed to be up there, so there's nothing for you to up there. Like normally if you have a stairwell up to the roof, you have tables and chairs and a place to sit. But up there it's just that's why they call it tar beach. So it's just tar, and sometimes in hot summer the tar get on your nice dress or on your shoes that stain your skin, all this thing. So you only really go up to be like, hey man, it's like 80 degrees and the moon is out and we got some jazz cigarettes and some whiskey. Let's go on up there. And somebody goes like, yeah, let's get up to the rooftop. So you get all up there and you try and make your move on these girls, and the girls test to see if your move is worth being made on them on this rooftop. You talk this smoke, you talk this jazz, and you see New York City skyline, and you see the full moon, and you talk all this thing. And then people always want to go, let's go over to the edge and look over.
But I got to tell you this. I mean, and maybe it's because I'm a square, but I've never had that in my DNA to want to go, oh, hey, let me go hang over here.
No, but it's like everything. Like you've climbed trees before, right? So
yeah,
I used to climb trees, and this is how I know my level, right? Some people wouldn't climb trees. Some people would climb to the first thing and be like, nah, I'm good. Some people will go all the way up to the freaking canopy, the very tip top, where I'm thinking the branches are weak. I would climb about mid-level to just below mid-level, and I'm like, because I begin to think, how am I getting down from here? It's always easier to get into the problem than to get out of the problem. Excuse me. And trees are just like that. So I would get up there and be like, sure, how am I getting out of here? And then, mind you, years later, I met all these kids who were skateboarders who never climbed trees or did any of this stuff. And I was like, oh. And it's every generation tests themselves differently, right? I don't know about girls, but every generation, I'm assuming girls have their way of doing this same kind of like rite of passage stuff too. But, every generation tests itself with something. I think the last time we spoke, we said flying down Dead Man's Curve, like without touching the brakes.
Dead Man's Hill, yeah.
Yeah, so all these kind of like silly things you do as a kid, I think that lets you know a lot about where you are. Like, so, like I'm not standing on the eave of the building looking over, but yeah, I would put my foot on the eave and give a good glance. But there were always these people who would do stuff like how people would touch you, not shocking, but like abruptly to get you to kind of go, ugh, like that, and go, haha, I got you. Like, it's all these people who are always the problem. People who always play games around areas like this, right? So, yeah, you go up there, you talk smoke with the girls, you look over, you see, like, the New York City street from a different angle. You see the buses going by with the numbers on the top of them. You see bird nests up high up in the canopy. You can look up into, like, the rooftop of other buildings and into, like, the top floors of, like, the high building that you normally wouldn't see on the ground floor and be like, oh, wow, they've got, like, Xbox and this, that, and all this nice stuff. And you just talk smoke. People are cooking dinner, and you sit here, and after you're up there for, like, a half an hour, you go back down the ladder, you have more drinks, and that's generally the way it goes. And then the buzz gets out that people are up there, and then all these people who shouldn't be up there, it's like the VIP section, are all of a sudden on your roof being goofy, too close to the edge, and then one takes a stumble. And before you know it, you're talking to the cops about what happened, right? It's who you invite to your party. Everybody always wants to start. I've been at parties where there was 1,500 people. At the old Akiva Studios in Dumbo. Shout out to all those guys who were ever at any of those parties. And I remember once having to talk to the cops because I have cop experience, because they sent like a squad car up to this warehouse where there was 1,500 people partying in like the first 2 floors of it. And the neighbors, and they were converting it to apartments then, were complaining about, the noise. So yeah, man, it's always the idea of a party, right? And by a party, I don't mean a good time, turn up the music party. I mean a party of people doing something. So you'll have your intelligent people, your thinking people, your people who are goofy and silly, all in this party as they migrate from point A to point B. And in this scenario, I was trying to migrate, I was essentially trying to up the level of the party. Oh, man, this party is great. Oh, man, this party is great, and I met this cool girl. Oh, man, this party is great, and my man met a cool girl. Hey, let's get some stuff, make this party extra great, get this jazz cigarette, get up to the roof of this brownstone, and just us 5 or 6 talk about it. And a half an hour later, you got like 20 people on the roof, and now you begin to worry about, can this roof tolerate 20 people on it as more people wanting to come up? And then you're trying to keep it cool. Now you got to be the teacher because it was your idea. Hey, whoa, nobody needs to, be dancing up here. And why you're loud? It's supposed to be like a surreptitious thing. And now you got all these people who are not native to doing sketchy stuff, like, some of us ex-graffiti artists were sneaking into places. And they're just in New York because they always wanted to live in New York from God knows wherever the heck they're from. And, they ruined the whole vibe. And sometimes this is what you get. Look at me, I'm ruining the vibe. I'm taking pictures too close to the edge. Ah! Boom. Wow. Whose friend is she? Who invited her? Somebody call an ambulance. Where's her mother? Who's going to go to the hospital with her? What time? Who owns this house? Where the homeowner? You know what I mean? All these things come up when one person, crashes.
And listen, I'm not trying to make light of the situation.
No. We're not making light. We're saying this is where it comes from. It's not making light of anybody.
Right. No. Listen, I'm not trying to make light of the situation. But this is when we would say, whose man is this?
Yeah, exactly. Who brought you to this set? No, he's got to go, and you can go with him. A lot of this thing in hip hop, the original hip hop, I tell people all the time, the stuff you hear on the radio today is rap music. It is not hip hop.
Yeah.
Hip hop is a cultural thing. It's connected to the people, right? So you may hear a banging song with rap music in it. That is rap music. That is not hip hop, right? So in hip hop, if I had a party and I invited you and you brought 6 dudes, those 6 dudes are on your good credit, right? And I'll be like, oh, one of those dudes is fire. He's mad cool. Then he becomes in. And then if he brings somebody, they're on his credit. What you don't do is bring people to people's parties, which is always held at their house, who are kleptos and violent knuckleheads and just all around, excuse my language, And then when all chaos breaks loose, go, oh man, it's on you. We all in the community know this. So when you have wider parties with other cultures, you never really know how they get down in other cultures. Like, for example, the idea, I have fallen asleep around y'all I don't know how many times. The idea when I went to college that I found out that white kids would fall asleep at a party and other white kids would draw on their faces in permanent marker, I instantly thought everybody I know would kill you. Like, this would be a police incident. And they were like, you need to have a sense of humor. I was like, it's permanent marker. I don't need to have a sense of humor. That's crazy. That says I can't trust you. Yeah. In all ways, how does that not say I can't trust you? You know what I mean? It says things that I love I can't leave around you. You know what I mean? I can't fall asleep around. Then I know goddamn well my sister can't fall asleep around you. What is going on in this vibe of their party community versus our vibe? Now, we've got stuff in our party community that I'm not a fan of, and I'm sure they'll look at that and go, what the heck is that? Right? But at the same time, it's being introduced to new, let's call it a new paradigm and how one gets down with their friends. But then when you do that, you go, this is my limit. Like, I don't do practical jokes. Everybody who knows me knows, don't pull a practical joke on me. I don't do them. I'm not trying to get even. I will curse you out, and that will be back when cell phones were new, right? There was this guy, and I used to be a bar guy for like 16 years. Played pool there, shot darts there, was just perfecting my speech game at these bars like I'm Socrates, right? So this guy who I knew, who just from the bar, I played a couple of pool games with him, bought me a beer cage, and I bought him a beer cage and played a couple of darts. Never really had anything in common. So I get this phone. Back in the day, it was like one of the new iPhones. And he's like, oh, man, that's a new iPhone. I'm like, yeah. He's like, can I see it? Like, sure. So, and I don't even know why. I don't have anybody by phone anymore. but I handed him my phone, and he looks at it. I see his like thumb do some flippy flip stuff, and then he goes, hands it back to me with a smile on his face, and I look at it, and everything's in Japanese. And he had gone into the setting and switched the language, right? And he was obviously more adept at computers and stuff than I was, like, because he knew that was in there, and I had never guessed that was in there. And I just looked at him. I went, change it back. And he like, it was a joke, but I wasn't feeling him. And he started like, it was just, I was like, change it back. He's like, all right, man, don't get on. I just said, I just kept telling him, change it back. Every time he began to utter a sentence, I just say, change it back. So he did it really quick, flipped it back, and I looked at it, and I just looked at him like, why would you think you could do, you know what I mean? It was, and after that day, I was done with him, right? And it was the idea of, you know, not that I tolerated him. We were in a public place together. You know, we're supposed to tolerate each other. We didn't have anything that made us friends, and we didn't have anything that made us enemies. He was just someone that I knew, and people I knew him. But the fact that he did this to this thing that I owned that was brand new, and he was this person that I wasn't that close to, and I have these boundary issues because you're like, you know, black people have little, so this is property. What, you know, so all these kind of things played in. Mind you, that's on top of this being a bar where I'm obviously drinking that night. And all these things had played into that interaction of my cultural thing of I don't know you, but I'm cool with you, and his cultural thing of, hey, let me play this practical joke on this guy that I barely know with his thing, not knowing that me and practical jokes don't get along. I've seen jokes that I think are cute, but 95% of them I think are mean-spirited and dark. So I mean, I tell that story because, you know, we all are pushed in our comfort zone, I guess, by randomness and it comes out of the blue. So how do you handle it? Should I have punched him in the face? That would have been totally. Would that have been appropriate? I'm thinking it was a bar late. Yeah, I think it totally would have been appropriate had I punched him in the face. Now that I think about it, but then I would have had to go to the
until he filed charges on you.
Well, yeah, everybody always files charges. Man,
everything's okay until they press charges.
Exactly.
Like,
when keeping it real goes wrong, right?
Right.
Well, Your Honor, he changed my language in my iPhone, and then so I put. Yeah, right. Oh, really? That's how you handle your problems? 6 months in jail, stupid. Congratulations. You could have went to the iPhone store and just had them undo it. I tell young cats all the time, look, I get standing up and having to brawl when it's necessary, but I look at this stuff, and 80% of this stuff is not necessary. You know, cats talking about, I'll kill a dude if he did X, Y, and Z. I'm like, you know what? All right. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. If I'm killing dudes, you know, you'd better have affected a woman in my family. You know what I'm saying? Where when I'm standing up in court, the jury goes, that makes perfectly good sense to me, versus, you know, he's dating my ex. What kind of nonsense are these? You know, and they're always the same type of character. Always the same type of character. Anyway, that was my I'm off that rant. Let me move on.